Namaste and welcome to the second season of Future Fit Corporates. My name is Bhavana Issar and I'm the founder CEO of Caregiver Sathi. In this season, we are going global and shifting the narrative. Caregiving is not a career obstacle or something that organizations must accommodate. It's a leadership accelerator. And through candid conversations with corporate leaders, consultants, and change makers, we explore how caregiving shapes resilience, empathy, and innovation. Let's discover what it truly takes to build workplaces that don't just include caregivers, but recognize that caregiving experience is an asset. Because the future of work is not just tech, female, or inclusive, it's compassionate, it's innovative, and therefore caregiver friendly. Welcome to Future Fit Corporates. I'm delighted today to have this conversation with you, Poornima. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much, Bhavana. Great to be here and to talk to you about this very interesting subject.
So tell me, Poornima, how do you see a point of intersection in your discipline, expertise, and the fact that we are interested in shaping workplaces for the future and looking at the intersection of what it might mean for caregivers, caregiving, and the care economy?
Okay. So I think future-ready businesses or leaders need to keep a couple of things in mind. Yeah. One of them being that if the big growth targets that we've set for ourselves, whether it is about GDP or SDGs or any of those, it is a fact that we have only 33% of the women in the workforce, or the number, at least in India, hovers around somewhere around there. So if 1/3 of the workforce is the only segment that is contributing, and you have the rest who are not being able to engage with it for various reasons, some out of choice, but a large segment is because they cannot, or the supporting structures are not available. That means that we are actually, for 50% of our economy, contributing at 1/3 of its capacity. So that in itself means that, as we're being held back by some of these structures that are not allowing women to come into the workforce. Because if they were being there and playing out their full game, and I'm sure in the course of our conversation, we'll talk about what the full game means, it would be contributing both to whether it is to GDP targets, whether it is about more inclusive development, but also about how some of these families or economies can actually have a greater say in how the world is turning out.
I have so much to learn from you because of your expertise in economics, and I would like for you to wear that hat and take a step back and help us understand from an economics lens, why is it important for us as a country to chase GDP?
Okay, so that in itself is a contentious one, because yes, a lot of people do believe that GDP alone is not a great metric by itself. But I will try to address that. I think in any kind of, and we've all studied management, we do need to have some ways to measure growth or progress. If we are talking about over time, how are we performing? There need to be ways to measure it.
Right.
What GDP stands for is gross domestic product. It tells us how much are we creating or consuming as an economy every year. So when we look at the gross domestic product of a country, we are talking about how much of either production or consumption has taken place in a year across sectors. So there is one way of measuring it where you come at it, where you add up everything that was produced in the course of the year across agriculture, manufacturing, services, various allied sectors, and you arrive at a number. There is another way of calculating it where people look at the consumption side. How much have people consumed in any given year? And typically at the end of the day, production would be equivalent to consumption, plus minus imports, exports, etc. So That's the purpose of this metric, is to be able to say, compared to last year, did we produce or consume more? And in a normative society, it would be expected that over time you are improving and increasing that number. So the equivalent number of that in a company or a organization parlance would be revenue, where we are saying that this is the quantum that we produced in total. And to that, you would then deduct other costs and all of that to arrive at your profit. But there is that metric, that a quantifiable metric that helps us understand how we are moving. So in a national economy context, GDP, gross domestic product, plays that role. There are, of course, many other ways to also look at progress and growth. So towards that, we have other metrics like the Human Development Index, HDI. We have the Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPI. And so these are ways to also triangulate access questions like access to health, education, quality of life, which are also parameters around which we need to be growing and performing. The SDG framework is another kind of such framework where it looks at health, nutrition, access across various parameters. There are 17 SDG goals. So all of this, Bhavana, I think are ways where we are trying to make sense of the world. There is no one metric that is the singular metric. GDP is held in that regard, similar to revenue. And we all know that revenue is also not the only metric. There's so much else that comes before you are talking about bottom line. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because of course it is a contentious and a debatable topic. And I think pursuing just earning at an individual level or GDP at the level of a nation are obviously incomplete, and you don't want to do that. But my question to you would be that GDP would be a function of everything, the infrastructure and the support systems that are probably not counted directly into GDP, but that contribute to GDP. For example, I would like to bring in the whole idea of unpaid care work, or the health of societies or families that contributes to healthy participation in the workforce. So help me and our audience understand that how would shifting people from unpaid care work to fully participating in the economy help us in the long run? Or what is the assumption there?
So technically, when we have always spoken about care, it has been around things which are intangible, right? When you're taking care of someone, it's an intangible activity that you do. And it has not had a necessarily historically a monetary value assigned to it. But in all our calculations of national income accounts, GDP, etc., the underlying thinking is that what is measurable, what is monetizable. And so a lot of care work, and so there is this there's this joke in economics that you study in undergrad, that if you married your housekeeper, then the GDP would probably come down. And I think today we have moved a lot from that kind of thinking. We may not act very differently as a society, but I think we have moved a lot from that thinking, where a lot of this is now monetizable or monetized. Where if you are availing the services of a creche, now that is caregiving for a child, which historically may or may not have been monetizable. But now that it is moving out of the ambit of the household, there is a value you are paying for it. And so there is a way, there are people getting employed under it. There is a way to account for it. And so it's there. As and when we are having more and more of these things come into play. So domestic work, the more we are able to get domestic work in terms of something where we are putting values or standards to it. I think there have been groups that have also been trying to bring frameworks where it's there are unions that have been saying what the pay should be and that it should not be exploitative. So we have a long journey to go on that. But if I had to just quickly say that from a care economy point of view, my reading would be domestic services, which is household care, child care services in the form of both creche or nurseries, as well as early child education could come within that. And the third being elder care, where as you're growing older, the kind of care that comes. And these are three that I definitely and clearly see as emerging fields, and where some amount of monetization has already started. But developing pathways around these are very going to be. A lot of this was traditionally happening within the household, especially when we had joint families. There was no way to either account for it, and there was also this thinking that naturally the woman of the house is going to do it. Now, increasingly, we are seeing a lot of this get pulled in.
And you're back.
Hi. Yes, I got dropped out. I don't know
how. Traditionally, we had nuclear families, is where you were. So,
yeah. So I think traditionally, when we had joint families,
joint families,
the home-based work, the caregiving for the children, as well as the elder care would happen within the family as a unit. And now increasingly with smaller units of the family, we are finding some of these activities where we are being able to bring in caregivers for that. I somehow also feel that this means that at least some part of this becomes monetizable, and to be able to assign values to it, and people who are doing it pro bono also within the family have a sense of what this could be valued at.
Right.
But yeah, I'd love to, make this more real in terms of your own work. And, are there other buckets other than these three that I've listed out that you see forming part of the care economy, Bhavana, since you work so much in this area?
Yes, of course. I think there is a very large chunk of people who need support because they have special circumstances or life-limiting conditions during their life. So they could be adults with disabilities, they could be people with chronic conditions, they could be individuals who are quote-unquote not productive for a society, but are members in the society. So, for example, one of my biggest let's say contentious areas has been that there is a pool of people in a society who are, let's say, terminally ill or incapacitated, so to speak. Yeah. They are consuming resources of the society, right? What are they giving to the society? So they are seen as liabilities, or are they contributing to society in some way? I'm going to just pause over here because I have a point of view. I'd like to hear your point of view, and then I'll come with mine.
So I think not everything can be looked at in this quid pro quo kind of an approach. So I think people who are around and are also as much a part of and contributing to society. You may not be able to assign a value, but their presence, I'm sure, adds value to their families. So we can't, I think, be so additive or subtractive around the presence of people or the absence of that. Otherwise, euthanasia would be a thing which all such families would want to go in for. There's a reason why their families would like them to stay. There's a reason why they have a will to live. And having support through your life does not necessarily make your life worthless. So having, I think, therefore, support mechanisms which can build around this. So if you ask me, Bhavana, I see a huge, I would see this as also an opportunity where people who have the skills and the inclination and the desire to build their skill set towards this, whether it is geriatric care, palliative care, as you mentioned, care of people who would, need support along their lives. And India has traditionally been a place where you do have people doing caregiving in different forms. We know that especially states like Jharkhand, West Bengal, etc., have outsourced labor to specifically deliver on some of these, and these are families sending, remitting money back home. Philippines has built its entire economy around caregiving. So I would look at some of these aspects as opportunities where services can be provided, businesses can be built. There's a huge entrepreneurial base. So some across the spectrum, and this is my work is in the whole business to social impact spectrum. I think whether it is pure impact or whether it is for profit, across the spectrum, there is an opportunity also for caregivers to organize themselves or to have businesses or services that deliver some of these.
So it's fantastic that you should talk about your work in the social impact space. I would like for you to tell us a little more about how do you believe that work that is done in the social impact space can actually be relevant for organizations that are pure play for profit, or that is relevant for businesses or GDP in general. And then we will come to, how do we frame the care economy, right? We don't have a care economy, so to speak, today, but we do have an opportunity to frame what care economy should look like. And therefore, I would like for us to start from your experience in the social impact space.
So, Bhavana, I think that in the spectrum of pure play impact and pure finance, there is a huge range of organizations and types of work that exists. And this belief that we can purely focus only on profit and not think about the impact lens. I think now a lot of leaders have woken up to this fact that we live in society, we live in a context. The biggest of businesses realize that there needs to be a license to operate, and that my own experience with, I've been fortunate to be with the Tatas for many years, where some of this is built into the ethos. But a lot of other companies also, like Unilever, like Johnson and Johnson, I see over time these organizations have evolved their own thesis that our businesses will be able to deliver and stay in the long run if we are also doing right by our stakeholders. And that has sometimes meant pivoting the business in a particular way. It has meant thinking about sustainability or making that a little core to the principles. Admittedly, it is easier for larger corporates to think about some of this because they do have sometimes access to resources to be able to do it. But I also see that a lot of newer fledgling organizations, their leaders are driven by this thinking that, are we doing right? Are we bringing meaning to our work? And it's heartening to see that they're struggling then about the how. They are not, with them, you don't have to work so much on buying in of the why, but the how part is where a lot of the work or thinking needs to be. So I see two, three sets of leaders, some who are still on that journey of feeling that this is important. There are some who genuinely believe that both these worlds will talk to each other. They may not completely talk to the impact side all the time, but they see its value and are happy to support or find ways to do it. And then there are some who are the core believers who want sustainability, who want a lot of this to be part of what they do and not just a checkbox item.
So if you are looking at social impact at scale over time, and you were the person in charge, and you would say, listen, we have a set of companies that are driving both production and consumption at a certain rate. We would also want to drive social impact. And let's say you are the person in charge of care economy for India. What would you do?
If I had that role, okay, I think that first of all, it would be important to create, I'm going to take this role a little seriously, though I'm not the right person for it. But I think the starting point would be, which are some of those avenues where opportunities exist or where the gap is there. So first is a landscaping to look at across the demographic life of a person. So we spoke about early childhood, maternal care. Then you mentioned examples of across the life of people and when you're older. That's the lifespan of a person. Across each slice, what are the kinds of opportunities that lie in the care economy? And within that, some of them may not, and across segments of society also, some of them may not be monetizable.
Yeah.
and need to definitely be something which is supported by charity. So I do a lot of advisory on where should the dollar money that you have, where should that go. So my work is to help leaders and companies think about where is it, what is the cost benefit analysis, and where is the investment best placed. Now, I would think that there are some where pure play philanthropy is what is required, and
Right.
that the presence of a corporate of say private equity or something like that would actually skew the incentives. So
Give me an example.
very basic healthcare for very marginalized communities who
Mm-hmm.
absolutely have zero purchasing power.
Hmm.
We have a lot of communities like that in very remote parts. They would
Right.
need the free medical services that the government provides.
Correct.
And so there will always be this role at the grassroots that the government plays.
Right.
Effectively,
Right.
Bhavna, folks like your Anganwadi workers or Asha workers are part of the care economy.
That's right.
The largest footprint of, and these are all women mostly,
That's right.
the largest footprint on the front lines of our government machinery are women in the care economy.
That is true. But they are not compensated adequately for it, which is another matter.
Yes.
Or there is an assumption that you will do this as voluntary work, or you will do this of the goodness of your heart, or you will do this because, you are playing that role in the family, but you don't get compensated for it for money.
Yeah. Which I think brings us to the perception play around care.
Right.
One part is practically what is monetizable or what can be made a business out of. But there is this big part, which is the perception around care. And very clearly, the perception around care is you should be doing it out of the goodness of your heart, A, and B, a woman should be doing it. I don't know what we did to get, the benefit of this goodness of the heart allocated purely to women. But these are the I think the hypothesis which is guiding a lot of this. A, it should be free. B, the perception that it should be women. C, I'm sure it is also about, what price point for whom and how. There's a lot over there also where there are assumptions. So
there are lots of people, Poornima, who believe that because women give birth biologically, you are naturally tuned to be caring and nurturing more than men. I mean, in my view, that's a lovely myth to live by, but that's a belief that's very firmly held by both men and women, that what a woman, and especially one who is a mother, can do is not what others can. And I think, to your question, I don't know what did we do to get this. Well,
I think that was more a rhetorical question, but I think the reality is that is a perception, and that perception becomes reality when it's in action.
Yes.
So if one has to find ways to make it more better paid, or even to make sure, and I think the larger question is when women across both early stage as well as in the latter parts of their life, when this caregiving role is coming in, it affects many things, but also their ability to productively engage in the workforce. And so if we look at this whole question about why are women not making it to the CXO suite, why are, so right at the top, when we're talking about board engagement of women, their ability to stay through the course of their careers, through the caregiving journey becomes a challenge. And the second part is also right at the grassroots, where we are talking about the informal sector economy. Trades like construction, like, where there is hard labor involved, but where their ability to actually step out gets constrained. Those are also trades where we find that women are not being able to participate completely. So I think there is an angle around this where how do you make this more lucrative, but also how do you address this perception so that across the board we are able to have men and women both participate in the care economy, and for this to actually be a sector that can fire. So I would even put a very enlightened self-interest logic to it, that if this sector really needs to boom, it needs to have both genders participating a lot and seeing value in participating.
Absolutely. I think if equal opportunity was our goal to offer any individual, then I think restricting somebody to a gendered role only limits potential, I think, simply said. If I'm good, if I'm better, let's say at technology, then confining me to a caregiving role will be quite a bad idea, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
and therefore, I see your point. Poornima, what I would like for you to also help us probably unpack vis-a-vis, some of the things around care and care-related work is that in your experience of interacting with leaders, and when, let's say, you talk to leaders and you say that let's strategically plan for the future. Yeah. Uh, what is your experience on one hand, and what is your expectation that leaders would see in terms of quick results and long-term investments when they are shaping organizations? And then we will say, okay, what's the role of women in the workplace, or caregiver-friendly workplaces, etc.
I think very clearly leaders want to see action and a mix of action and strategic direction.
Okay.
So strategic direction, which is saying that in the next 4-5 years, we are going to, maybe do something path breaking, be part of the top 1, 2, or 3 in our sector. And what
Right.
is the future trajectory going to be like in the world overall? And therefore, what do we need to build for? So that's the
Hmm.
first. Directionally, where are we going? And
Hmm.
coupled with that, a very clear picture about what does the next year look like? What does the next quarter look like? How do we break it down into actionable things? And
Hmm. Hmm.
and definitely in my tenure, how do I make sure that we are doing something path breaking? And how do I look good? But how do I also be seen to have made a significant um, leap within for the organization? This takes different forms, I think, for different kinds of leaders. For some,
Right.
I think the basic motivation along these lines is common. For some
Hmm.
leaders, I think this takes the form of what will I deliver immediately in the next quarter? Give me something I can think, see, feel. And
Hmm.
for some, that the runway is much more important because depending on the nature of the organization, staying alive in the short run, we all know in the long run, everyone is dead. So that immediate runway becomes very important.
Right.
But and I think a lot of some of I would not classify all startups or all early mid stage companies in that area, but a lot of the cases of quick burnout, even investors creating a misplaced set of incentives for the organization, the board being silent,
Hmm.
all of these stem from that need
Hmm.
to have moved very quickly, very fast, and move those metrics. The second type, of course, is where the leaders are, there is what I would say a little more tehrav in the nature of decision making. It doesn't mean slower, but it means
Hmm.
willing to keep an eye on the long view and not compromising the short run as well. So
Right.
you do need to
Right.
show results, but sometimes it's a considered call that let's not make this step, let's not take the step which may actually compromise us 5 years down the line. And so leaders who are able to, thinking fast and slow, who are able to straddle that, I see being able to, look at things in that way. And I also think that it's a function of who is surrounding them. So, what kind of advisors do you have? Who is on your
Hmm.
board? I
Hmm.
definitely think having a good mix of people on the board, which is a mix of finance, governance, execution efficiency, and a little bit of long-term strategic thinking. That mix on the board is very important. And
Hmm.
if there is a leader who's willing to have surround themselves, and the culture is that you can actually have a real conversation to build that. There are few organizations I think that are able to strike that sweet balance, but where they are able to do that, I think then even if one or two voices are pulling in different directions, together they're able to go the right path.
So what you're saying is so attractive. And I have just realized that we have left that question about your leading the care economy in India. So we will get back to that one. But I do want to just for now highlight the point that you're making, which is that leaders that can straddle both the short and the long term are really valuable. And in order to be able to do that, it helps leaders to surround themselves with individuals that can bring in diversity of thought. Now, it's not just functional diversity. Perhaps it is experience diversity, life experience, my outlook. Of course, me being a different gender or different life experiences helps. If I come from different socioeconomic strata, that helps bring my own perspective in if I have a voice. And help the leader shape the organization. That's what I make out of what you have said for an organization. But let's go back to the you're in charge of the.
Can I add
Yes.
one part to that? That is, with that, coherently being a good decision-making unit together.
Right.
Having these multiple viewpoints and not arriving at decisions, or not being able to move forward, then becomes suboptimal.
Yeah.
So being able to actually leverage that to take decisions and being in that zone that we are here to take decisions and move forward as an organization, I think is very critical. And the role of the board is to actually help to do some of that. They're not there to just be present and give a voice, but also to help in moving forward, so that you're, as an organization, in 5 years, you've actually done that thinking fast and slow and made those steps.
Great point, because I think what you're saying is that it is equally important to take some decisions, maybe make some mistakes. It's okay. So long as you are recalibrating yourself, reflecting on it, and then making different sets of decisions, but learning and moving continuously is really important from a leader's standpoint. So here's a little point for leaders to take a step back and say, one, am I surrounded by enough diverse experience? Two, do the people who are surrounding me have enough voice? And three, are we taking decisions enough and reflecting on them enough to learn from them? So thank you for that. But let's go back to you being in charge of the care economy in India.
Okay, so I think we spoke about landscaping first, which is to look at which are the slices where care-related work is happening. The second layer on this would be to see where are the organizations currently? Are there organizations that currently exist in this spectrum and populate it there, and look at, are there gaps? Do there need to be some fresh institutions that need to come in to fill in some of the gaps? Are there pathways for these organizations to actually function meaningfully, or is there the need for an industry forum, or is there a need for better governance? What are the challenges? Why is this industry either not flourishing or not shaping up, or what will it take? Sometimes it's a funding gap, where then bringing in the right kind of people needs to be there. Sometimes it's a regulation gap. Sometimes it could be that there are the working conditions, or it is around the way labor is organized. And so the conversations need to be around norms for better quality of work or working conditions, or even better rules and a stronger regulatory environment. I will give you an example. I think many times people stop short of engaging care workers at home because they are worried about safety, about privacy, and so they would much rather go through an agency. What would it take for some of these agencies to get certified? Is there a good role for certifying agencies? And is certification a very possible and likely business that can, with the right kind of tools and people in charge, build that trust in the ecosystem?
Is this the job of the government, or is this the job of a private player?
So my view on this, Bhavana, is that in some of these things, it is not one person's job or the other. I think it's a function of where is the gap. For example, if somebody like you feels strongly about the care economy, is setting up something, and you are seeing a gap, then either building that within your organization or figuring out which stakeholder has the best capability to bring in value here. For example, if it's a labor conditions issue, then someone like you or others in your ecosystem may actually feel that this needs to be brought to the notice of the Ministry of Labor and Welfare. And otherwise, they may not see it. So I don't think it makes sense for one party to wait for the other to start, because a lot of these are going to be at this intersection of government, business. Some part may need research or early stage innovation. So academia may have a role over there. Civil society is at the front lines. I see a lot of these answers being where players across the board come together to solve for some of these. So we have to take a step, bring in the requisite player to get started, create some momentum around it. I don't think it makes sense to wait for one party to make a big announcement. But yeah, if there is a blue white paper that one wants to bring out, then going to the right government person, going to an Niti Aayog, finding traction there could be a good way to go.
That's fantastic. And let's say that now we have, let's say, a blueprint, and we are able to see what the gaps are for the care economy. And let's say we will say that there are some things that can be filled with an economic approach, or let's say a business approach. But of course, there are some parts that cannot be filled with a business or an economic approach, and those should be left out because, they are about building healthy societies or healthy human beings, and they are beyond the tangible business scope, but focusing on the care economy or whatever, in your experience of studying different countries or whatever, do you know of any that one could emulate? And then I would like to come to what can corporate India do here?
Sure. So before we go out of the country, I think there are many players doing some things within India itself. So,
Okay.
for example, training and capacity building for healthcare workers. At some of the skilling service providers have started building towards.
Right.
Is an important activity, and they would, I think, be part of this kind of a story. There would be now with elderly care coming up. I do know Gandhi, a good friend and earlier colleague of mine, has set up a company called Happy to Age, which is with the senior living. You have what you're doing, Caregiver Sathi. I think the entire senior living community, which is a real estate story today, and a fairly lucrative one, which is, whether it is, I don't know, a number of real estate developers, probably there is Shubha, there's Ashiana, there are many others who are building that out. There will be synergies about service delivery at such locations. I was, in fact, doing a recce like this for my parents, and I found that many, and when I visited a lot of these sites, many people who work in these locations are earlier from the airlines or the hotel industry.
Yes.
So services as a sector moving into caregiving has started happening organically already.
Yes.
And they are seeing this as a place where, okay, now I don't want to fly to so many locations anymore, but I can use that service skill set that I have in one location in this particular way, and maybe then take a transfer to different sites where I am needed. There is food and hospitality, which is coming in a big way, both within hospitals, but also at such places. I was talking to the other day, I had the opportunity to visit some of these self-help groups in rural India who are providing ragi laddus for the midday meal scheme.
Right.
Now, if it is coming as part of midday meal scheme, I would call it in some way plugging into the care economy, because it is not only coming into midday meals, it is also going for early for pregnant women, post lactation. So what kind of food and nutrition will go there is part of care economy. So how do we, I don't think we should start from a slate where we are saying, oh, nothing exists and now that blueprint is going to be made. But if one created a broad blueprint and looked at who all are already populating it, I think we would find a substantial number of players who are probably not talking to each other or seeing each other as players in the same sector.
Well said. Well said.
And that takes it what someone like Indra Nooyi was saying, that now after her life at Pepsi, etc., she is seriously thinking of the care economy as what she wants to devote her, some years to. Now, it's great when an industry leader is thinking about that, because then she has access, avenues, the networks to also bring in the right set of voices as well as listeners,
Yes.
do something.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. No, it's fantastic. I mean, she has the ability to shine the light at the right place and for people to then, listen to it. And it's quite incredible. Not just Indra Nooyi, but also Melinda Gates. And, they are definitely leading from the front. Coming back to, so let's say corporates are a part of the Indian ecosystem, and there is a primacy of pursuing profit as a goal or the reason to exist for most industries. And they're a part of the country, or they're part of the overall economy. So how do you see corporates shifting to account for the change of demographics and the need for the care economy? Right? So what is it that corporates need to do?
So the first place is, of course, women in the workforce within the companies itself, where
Make a compelling case. So why should women not just keep doing what they are excellent at, and why should they be a part of the C-suite?
I lost your voice. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. Make a compelling case for why women should now be a part of the C-suite instead of doing more of what they are good at for generations.
So I think women should. So I think the C-suite is the decision making. It comes back to what we were talking about, decision making and moving organizations forward.
Right.
And today we all know about the Leaky pipeline, and that we're getting a lot of women who are topping their schools and exams, etc. So it's not as if the aptitude is not there, and it's also not as if the knowledge is not there.
Right.
If they were, they would not be cracking these entrance exams with these kind of numbers or percentages. So the raw material is very good. The good thing is we have come to that point where we are able to say this definitively. Now, I think what most companies are also realizing is that once women come in, the retention ratio and what our company is doing to ensure that what they have invested, I think there's a clear case that if you're investing into the first few years of any candidate that you recruit, it makes sense if you are able to reap those benefits going forward, and they're able to contribute to your bottom line disproportionately.
Right.
To be able to do that, you have to make them stay. Now, one way is to make them stay in your own company.
Sure.
But in a world where markets are moving and people will move jobs, I think our broader goal needs to be that we need to make sure that they are staying in the economy. They may or may not stay in your company per se till right up to the mark, but we need to make sure that they are in the game. Because then somebody who is in the game is moving to you from your competitor after 2-3 years or from some other sector, but they are bringing with them the richness of that experience. So I think if we think about it from that point of view, very few companies will have, the way the world is moving, very few companies are going to have lifers.
That is true.
We did see the TCS, the Infosys, so many companies, levers have had, and I think some chunk will still be like that. But the world we are moving towards is also a world where people are moving across organizations, and we are seeing that as a positive also. We are placing
It
some
adds to the
premium where
quality
you
of your
have
experience.
multi-sectoral expertise, etc.
Yeah.
But the point is that the leaky pipeline at any point within your organization or another is not good for all of us as businesses, because we have lost that talent. It may have been our talent, it may have been somebody's else's talent, but the fact is that we lost talent, which could have been ours someday.
But Poornima, you're making a great point, which is that sometimes we have a very traditional view of looking at talent. Right. And I think some of that is shifting. So I was immediately reminded of how sometimes it's, women are more than men take a step back when they have young children and then step back into the workforce. And now we are saying that, this is valuable experience and we want women to come back because, having born children or brought up children is a valuable life experience for even organizations to have. So bringing women back to the workplace is a good thing to do. It's not just a charity case. And therefore, even if you are losing people to other organizations or other walks of life, getting them back in one way or the other is actually a valuable thing to build the diversity of experience. But to me, what that says is that we need to recalibrate how we hire. Most of us, at least in HR, tend to look at, the relevant experience and the continuity of experience. And maybe we have an opportunity to reframe that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And programs like Skip and some of the other second careers for women have been, very positive in that sense, where there is some amount of support, handholding, and then women come back into the workforce. I would also like to say that I think the way now we are relooking maternity and parental leave itself, if we,
Right.
yeah, robust parental leave structures may also help women to, I would rather we are able to find ways to have them stay also, unless it is a choice or there are circumstances that are, hard to navigate. We should actually have, and companies are trying to do some of this, Bhavna, but
Right.
I think we need to do a lot more to make the environment more. So let us look at life events that happen. When does this dropping off or leaky pipeline happen? Marriage is one, childbirth is another, second child is a definite one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then elder care, or if there is somebody who needs certain kinds of caregiving within the family,
Yeah.
that may
Yeah.
happen. Your point is
Yeah.
valid that there is a lot of managerial skills that you're using in any case to do some of this. I see that as a bit of a hard sell with corporate India today. I think people may come
Yes.
around that, but I would see that as being very practical. I think it's going to take some time for everybody to get there. We are
Yeah.
in a world where even moving across functions is hard for people to stomach or to give
Yeah.
opportunities for. So, and if you speak to any recruiter, they will tell you that, businesses or leaders are looking
Yeah.
for that relevant experience. That's a very real one. If I were to look at what can we solve for in more near term, one is this, that can we have, if we're looking at parental leave, can we normalize men taking parental leave in our offices?
Yes.
Can we
Yes.
normalize the kind of conversation we have if a man even brings up wanting to take parental leave? I think it is very hard
Yes.
for men today to, even with all our woke conversations, to really,
It
say that
is.
they want to have a voice or a role in
It
caregiving
is.
at the workplace. It
Not
seems
just
to
at the
have,
workplace, I can say from my personal experience, my husband really struggled with the WhatsApp group for mothers. you know, he was the only man in that group for a very long time. And it was, the experience of exclusion is real.
yeah. So yeah, how do we make it easier for it to be a shared workload so that the
Yeah.
incidents of this having to drop off,
Yeah.
we are able to at least, address that to some extent. And that needs to happen both at home and at work.
That's right.
And a big role corporate India has is also on what is the narrative with men, and, are we allowing these conversations to happen at work? Can you even talk about your family at work without feeling like you're not a performer? So that is one. Two is the opportunities. I think the more women we have in C-suite roles, the empathy around some of these things will also naturally increase. I don't
Sure.
think till I crossed the 30, 32 age mark, I thought seriously about these things.
Right.
I genuinely, some part of me believed that, oh, it's all very equal, it's all very fair, we are putting in the same amount of effort, it will happen. And then you realize that what's happening around you is very different. So
Right.
I don't think companies or even individuals are geared to think about what is this going to mean career-wise. And if
Right.
companies are willing to create, and I'm not saying exceptional spaces for women, but make it easier for the men to also focus on their families and to reward
Right.
that, or to recognize that, whether it's in the office meeting or in the offsite, to cut out the snide jokes.
Yeah.
and in making sure that I would put one, if I have to have one takeaway, one ask from this whole conversation, Bhavna, make sure that when you're hiring for your C-suite or selecting from internal candidates, interview at least 2 women. Make sure they're on the shortlist. A lot of women also leave because they're not seeing growth. They are feeling that their growth pathway is not there. And they've not been interviewed, they've not been acknowledged.
That is true.
And somewhere in businesses, I think, and even in government, I would not put this for businesses as such, in society at large, there is a discounting that is happening post maternity, as women are coming closer to the 35-40 mark. There is somewhere, there isn't this thinking that women are very, very serious about their careers, even though we have so many shining examples, even among many people we know. So that thinking of that we need to see the women candidates also, and if we don't, we are going to ask questions. I was talking to someone from the Mahindras recently, and he was telling me that they've now started asking that. And when they look at that down the sales pipeline, they're holding their teams accountable. That it's not a diversity candidate conversation then. It's more about, did we at least get to see the talent? Are we addressing our own blind spots? So I think having certain rules are a good way to start. That in the shortlist, don't give the job to a candidate who does not deserve it. Please give it to a candidate on merit. But in the shortlist, did you see the female talent in your organization? And did you have then a feedback conversation also? Tell her what is it going to take for the next role. Maybe she's not ready for it today. But at each level, if we are able to do more of that, I think it will give women a lot of confidence and reason to stay on. I think I have seen too many women step away from organizations because they are either feeling that this trade-off is not worth it, or their work is not being seen. And so that the bias is real. And it's very hard for people who are being biased to say that they are biased or realize it. So we have to find ways structurally to say that, okay, at least 2 in every role, we will talk to the female talent. We will make sure there's a structured feedback. And where feedback is not just about, what you should have said differently, etc., but what work do you need to take on and deliver on to make it to the next role. So things like that, I think, will make it very much more concrete for women to see their growth path. I think women are smart enough. If they are seeing a tangible growth path, the chances of them dropping off become less and less.
That's fantastic. Poornima, I know that we are, this is a conversation that is rich, something that is close to your heart and certainly mine, and we could have many, many dimensions of this conversation. Yeah. I do want you to touch upon your corporate career and think about or suggest, what is it that organizations that wish to be future ready, that wish to recognize that employees have caregiver roles, in the light of everything else that must be done at the macro level? How can we, what can corporates do in a pragmatic way to support employees who are caregivers, and it will add up to the care economy?
So first of all, I think making these policies care policies instead of being women-friendly policies or maternal policies, etc. Some need to be very specific to a life event that women go. But having policies which legitimize care.
Right.
For example, if there was a leave for care, which could be care of an adopted child, which could be the leave for a senior person, it could be, but it is eligible. The eligibility is for men and women.
Right.
I think that's a huge step of signaling where you are saying that both parties can have caregiving responsibilities. We acknowledge.
Correct.
That is one. 2 is, I think, having support systems for people who are going through life events, where so some organizations have a counselor on call. Right. Some organizations have a tie-up with somebody, because that means that if there is a support system for people who are going through caregiver roles, then it makes it easier for them to balance work and their responsibilities. Sure. Otherwise, they are busy figuring it out alone. And typically in any organization at any given point in time, I would think 20 or 30% are having some kind of caregiving responsibility. So,
much more. BCG report says as high as 88 in India.
wow,
80%.
I learned something there. So, so if we acknowledge that, then having things like a support network or somebody like for Posh, we now have started having a systematic way of addressing it. Uh, That's a regulatory requirement. But
That's
here,
right.
if there can be some things where there is a caregiver on call, or the kind of services you provide, I think it helps to have a go-to person where the issues can be resolved. You can find support mechanisms, and actually some of those then reduce the mental load and can be a productivity win for the organization
Yes,
as well.
true. True. It impacts. There is the same report that I just mentioned. BCG report mentions that nearly 70% of employees who are caregivers are worried about their well-being and are choosing to leave the workforce. And it is increasingly a gender agnostic issue.
Interesting.
And likely to cause a GDP loss of billions, right? Because your productive workforce is burnt out or not adequately productive.
Also, I
So
would like to add that a corporate role can be sectors where we want to really where we see women having the potential to participate in the economy, and where we need to make it simpler. So construction, for example, is a sector where women and the family typically migrates. There, the Board of Construction Welfare (BOCW) has made certain provisions that the companies also contribute to. So things like these for sectors. Textile is another sector. The garment sector is one which employs women substantially. What are some of the sectoral interventions that can happen? So I also
great
see a role
point,
for
because I
something
think,
like CG,
yeah.
which is our XRI's group, which is coming together with industry related ideas that can solve for some of these. So I think companies there will be intervention which companies can do in company, and there are roles where companies can play as part of industry bodies like a FICCI, CII, etc., where the ecosystem is ensuring. I would love to see the local FICCI or CII chapter ensure that any geography has at least X number of creches, or make a case
Fantastic.
for that, so that
Great idea.
individual service
Great idea.
providers are not struggling, but that the industry says, we may not be employing them directly, but if this is there, then we would be happy to tie up. It's a win-win for both.
Absolutely. It's a win-win for everyone. And sometimes organizations are so small, it doesn't make a business case for one organization to have a crash. And for them to say we will just reimburse the cost of the crash also doesn't really work. So I think those are really great points. Poornima, as we bring this to a close, and probably I take a promise from you for a second conversation at some point, because there's so many things I'd love to talk to you about. I'd like for you to paint a picture of your ideal organization, a future-ready organization, let's say 15 years down the line.
That's interesting.
A caregiver-friendly organization.
I think a future-ready organization is a good way to term it, because it encompasses caregiving and many other things. I think it would be one where both men and women have an equal chance to make it to the CEO role. It should have a history of both having held that position. It would have a board which has a mix of people from both business and government, and where people have a voice and where they are moving and making some significant strides. I would like to see this company really succeed, because I think we have a lot of narratives around when companies don't succeed, etc. So I would like to see this company do extremely well on its profitability, bottom line, and share market numbers. I would want to see the leadership pipeline as one where you have, a good number of women being retained, as well as growing within the organization, and men as well. And having return to work policies, having a parental leave for both parents, a culture where you're able to bring your children to work also from time to time, and so that your children see how hard you work, and understand when the rubber hits the road and when you're not there, why you are not there, for men and women. So I would love to, have in that light, that they're learning what the workplace of tomorrow looks like.
Right.
And where someone who has the where lived experience of having solved for some of the deep impact problems is valued within the organization, and where you're building products and services that cater to not just 20% of the Indian economy, but 95% at least.
That last one, you stole my heart. Thank you. I think it's really important that we do cater to not just the 20% of our country, but look at overall development and the varied needs. I'm really grateful for your time, Poornima, today. Thank you very much. And with a promise for a second conversation soon. Thank you for your time. Anything you'd like to say to close this conversation?
Thank you. No, a very, very interesting and thoughtful set of questions, Bhavna. You forced me to put myself in very different shoes, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, and more power to the work that you're doing around caregivers.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of Future Fit Corporates. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't let it end here. Join the Future Fit Corporates Club or the FFC Club. Explore our full dossier and discover powerful blogs from our past speakers. Let's move beyond inclusion as a buzzword. Let's make diverse experiences, especially experiences of caring for others, caregiving, a leadership strength. Together, we can truly build not just a caring world, but future fit workplaces. Until next time, take care and let's keep the conversation on.